Hi, I'm standing on top of the national monument called Fort Pulaski, which is located just outside of Savannah, Georgia, on a small island called Cockspur Island. The fort was built right after the War of 1812, which was one of many forts that was built on the coast of the U.S. to protect from the British after, like, any other problems that would occur after the war. And you can see the fort right here. It's very big. And when it started to be built in 1829 and took 18 years to be built. It costed $1 million and it used 25 million bricks. And as you can see, it's definitely made of a lot of bricks. It was built on this island because it's in the middle of the Savannah River, and it allowed better protection from the British. So James Madison was the president at the time, and he was the one that decided that the U.S. needed this fort built. And when it was built, it was believed to be invincible and, quote, as strong as the Rocky Mountains. The walls are 7 feet thick. After the fort was completed in the 1840s, it was actually not used by the U.S. government, even though it was built to protect against the British. What happened was, 20 years later, when the southern states were the Confederacy was starting to break away from the Union, the Georgia governor, Joseph E. Brown, ordered the state militia to seize the fort because they knew that they would need a fort to protect Savannah. In November of 1861, the Georgia Confederate soldiers abandoned a small island called Tybee Island, which was across from Fort Pulaski, which was Cockspur Island. And this was a big mistake because it allowed the Union soldiers to set up on that island, which was the only way that they could attack Fort Pulaski. So immediately after the Union forces set up on Tybee Island, they started to attack the Confederates in the fort. They used a new kind of weapon that had just been experimented with called a rifle cannon, and this was believed to be able to penetrate the wall much better than a normal cannon. So they were able to use that cannon to destroy part of the wall, and it forced the Confederates to have to surrender because it exposed their gunpowder. So right now I'm in the room where Colonel Olmsted surrendered his sword to the Union leaders after the battle. And at that table right there is where he gave his sword up and the battle was over. This was his quarters. So the battle only lasted about 30 hours, which surprised the whole world because of how invincible they thought this fort was. But after the battle, the Union took it back over from the Confederates, and it was used as a Union base for the rest of the Civil War, but mainly it was actually used as a prison for Confederate soldiers who were captured. And actually many political Confederate leaders were kept in this fort. Okay, so I'm standing out in front of the fort, and it's the front side where the Union forces shot at and were able to breach the fort, and that's how they were able to take it over. And as you can see, the side over there was actually repaired because it was so damaged by the cannons. And if you look closely in one of the holes up there, you can still see a cannonball. And I just thought it was very interesting to see this. And one final important part of this fort was that after the battle, once the Unions were here, it helped out in the Underground Railroad because slaves would come here. Since this place is down in the South and there's not very many places that slaves can go to be free, since this is a Union place, the slaves came here and were shipped off to free places.